Bill, happy Friday. Cheers, my friend.
Happy Friday.
And we are, we were going to talk about something weighty, nature and grace. Maybe there is not a deeper theological topic, but
No.
geez, so much to talk about though. Otherwise,
Yeah. Well, I have a new grandson.
you do.
Yeah.
Good-looking kid.
Yeah, he is.
They're not all good-looking.
No, Asher James. Well, all ours are pretty good looking. I'm biased, but
And well dressed. I played golf with two of your sons.
we played. We had
Those, I'll tell you, they both dress for but it's interesting for photo partners on haberdashery. You wouldn't be my first pick, but I'm on the foursome. You'd still be. We were cart buddies. If we were playing a match, you'd still be my. Which both your sons are college athletes, so that's saying something. But I'll tell you,
my game's a little bit ahead.
It's
of
coming
theirs.
along too.
Yeah, I would take that. The first 9 holes I played, I would take that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we played the Jeffersonville Golf Club.
Which was nice.
An excellent staff. The Rangers are fantastic.
my youngest son, I thought he was going to drop him and fight the.
Oh, yeah.
He was mad when.
The Ranger.
He was so patronizing. He was very patronizing.
There were 3 guys behind us, and they were playing a little quicker than we were, and which is fine. Which is and I even thought about letting them go through like a hole and a half before that. I was like, maybe we should. I'm not sure, but also, it's one of those courses where. It was a busy day, so it's like, is there any place to go? Like,
there was a couple times that we had to wait for people in front
Yeah.
of us, but but you could just say, "Hey."
hey, can you go? But he lectured us.
He lectured them.
Them, yeah, them.
Yeah. But and we had, I tell you, we had a very sluggish lunch as well.
I'll tell you guys don't mess around. I thought we'll grab a quick hot dog. Bill's going. No, we're gonna sit down.
Oh,
And they ordered transfusions. I haven't had one of those since I lived in Pittsburgh. It's like vodka, grape soda, and ginger ale. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And we burgers,
Sliders.
I definitely
Dogs.
Oh my gosh, it did affect my my back 9. But at any rate, it was a fun day.
And what I like about the Boer Sons, they come out like I got 2 beers for the back 9. I said, maybe I'll put one on my bag to keep it going. They just came out with a bunch of Coors Lights in plastic bags full of ice. I'm like, you can do that? Oh yeah, they'll give you just giant bags of ice. It's pretty great.
Coors Light, the breakfast of champions.
It was fun though.
We had a good time. Yeah.
I had a really good time. Nice course too.
Yeah, we definitely.
We're giving them a free plug, but other than the Rangers,
yeah, I think I'm back to becoming a weekly golfer. I'm going to.
Me too. I'm into it. I actually practiced yesterday. I did monotonous things.
Yeah.
I hit sand wedge shots, like 20-yard shots.
It doesn't mean because you're. It doesn't mean I'm getting closer to death, does it? I just suddenly I have this urge to play golf more often. I'm wondering, gosh, what's going on?
It's fun though.
I
It's
took
very.
a day
it's
off
very-
today, so there's a lot.
Good for you.
What's going on with me?
All right. So now that we're so relaxed, let's talk about. Okay. So where could we go? First of all, do we want to start chronologically from newest? Because you and I talked today about the tape.
Yeah.
Between the Playboy model and, I mean, maybe there is. By the way, we're talking about, of course, Mark Werner, the senator, his tape. We know it's just so funny. We say, let's talk about the tape. We just know, who we're talking about. So,
Right.
but the Playboy model.
I'm more interested in the tape of that private conversation he had.
Who is it? Who isn't? So. This is Cohen. So is this Cohen? I mean, so my hero Michael Avenatti was just on your girlfriend's show, Nicole Wallace.
Yeah, Nicole.
And he was saying, first off, Avenatti's like, I don't know why we're calling this breaking news. I said 8 weeks ago these existed. And she's like, well, when you're in New York, I'll let you write the banners next time. But tell me. And he said, they were talking about the campaign. This is again John Edwards stuff,
Right.
A clearer case than Edwards.
Oh yeah.
Although Rudy Giuliani says it's exculpatory evidence because Trump said, "Pay her off with a check, not a bag of cash." So that means it's leaving a paper trail. so Avenatti's like, the fact that was an option, A or B, is absurd. Like, oh, we do the normal bag of cash, or do we want to cut a check? So that, but in the Giuliani School of Law.
And ethics.
It's exculpatory evidence.
Yeah, I think he'll be lecturing in Villanova.
Oh, absolutely.
ethics, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I called you today to run that. This is a pre-production for the show. But you agree? Right? It's just baked. If you're the 80%, a hardcore Republican. I mean, 90% is the approval, but let's say it's 80%.
Well, but still, only 1/3 of them are disturbed by the Russian stuff. That's even that may be the most disconcerting of all.
Putin's charismatic. Those pictures with the shirt off, I like those.
Fighting the tiger.
Fighting the comic books.
Yeah.
No, but so we were talking. This is baked in the cake, though, right? If you are,
people have already put his nefarious romantic behavior in a place, and they've either he wasn't born again yet,
yeah.
or
If you're a Republican enthusiast, who likes Trump right now, it's probably not going to change your mind.
I also say the only Republican enthusiasts would be those who like Trump. If you're a Republican and don't like Trump, you're not very enthused right now. What
does Nicole Wallace call? She says, I mean, I guess I'm a Republican, non-practicing. But, you think about, we have some friends, listeners of the show, who are Republicans who voted for Hillary, right? So they're going to, next election, vote, they're not going to vote for Trump. But I know people, professionals, doctors, who voted for Trump, and they regret it. I mean, they didn't like Hillary.
Sure.
They were willing to take a chance. I think it's the 6% of the electorate that's up for grabs, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it doesn't matter who either party nominates. Once they get the nomination, by and large, 46%. The nomination is 46% of the vote.
So he lost by 3 million votes, popular votes, last time.
Right.
Yeah, he would lose by 10 million popular votes this time.
But it's the electoral. It's the states.
I don't know. I haven't done the electoral college math to tell you that part of it. I don't know.
So, and then we're going to go into the double negatives.
That was just
sort of a. I like it. I like it. Hey, by the way, I'm also the grammarian in chief. Sort of like a double negative. And you know what? Bring a few porn stars in here and I'll diagram sentences. Oh!
Well, the fact he had to read the corrections, I thought it was pretty obvious.
I mean, I think that just about. So
that covers it.
So John Dickerson on the Slate Political Gaffes. We should have gone to that last night. I forgot that was last night, but it was in Glenside, PA. He said, well, here's my analogy for this. Even if you admit the correction, it doesn't hold water. Like, imagine somebody says, that you're, Al Capone, you're the mayor, whatever. Al Capone robs banks. And, that's credible. You believe that, whatever. The news says it. Your law enforcement people in Chicago all say it. Then he robs a bank. Your law enforcement agents come to you, and they say he robbed the bank. And Capone says, I didn't rob the bank. And all this is the precursor, and you say, well, I find both sides reliable. And to which David Plott said, that's great, except Capone didn't rob banks. It's like, okay, I knew there was a chink in the armor. But that is interesting, right? Even if you did the thing about, my intelligence agencies say it happened. I don't see why it would be Russia. I meant wouldn't be Russia. I mean, it was almost like I didn't want to use a double negative because I'm such a grammarian normally. But even still, you have all of the stuff where the parity between Putin and the intelligence. I mean, it's just amazing that would be the lie. I mean, why wouldn't you come up with a better lie?
Yeah, that's a bad lie. No, I don't. The thing is, one of the things I'm trying to understand, if you are someone who supports the president, or you support the president's version of things, let's say that. So what the president says is true. Well, what do you do when he contradicts, when he changes what he says? So he's the loci of.
It's like the Gospels. There's 4 accounts. Like one says there's 2 angels. One says there's 10. If there's 2, there could be 10.
So it seems to me that there has been a portion of our population that has basically given up their critical thought in order to support
Okay.
the president.
Okay, so first of all, let's change it. Let's diagram the sentence. There's a portion of our population that's given up its critical thought. Okay, when wouldn't that be true? Now,
All right, but that's it. All right. Let's say okay.
you're the one that always says nobody gets poor betting on the stupidity of the American people.
All right. Let's say I go, but wait a minute. Everybody makes decisions. For instance, I go back to the buffet at Golden Corral. Okay, last week I got there and I got sick off of their endless buffalo wing bar.
You shouldn't have gone to the Bassett.
So I'm not gonna. So I go to the Golden Corral again because whatever reason I go to Golden Corral. I go. You know what?
Because you're in rural Maryland.
I'm not gonna eat
Right.
eat the buffalo wings. Everybody makes those kind of critical decisions. So I'm saying, even at
I sometimes though I don't get sickness from it, but like if it's too hot, I still eat it sometimes.
well, all right, okay. But my parenthetical,
You're like, wait, that's debate. It's not.
it's like my son John. He's really bright, except he has gotten food poisoning 2 times from eating week-old Chinese food from the same place. So after, I don't know, any of you ever had food poisoning, it seems to me you just have to have that once to learn your lesson. But for whatever reason,
I think what you're saying is, look, for you people that are diehard, uncritical supporters of the president, just admit, I just love him. I love the guy.
or that whatever he says, you believe you'll follow him wherever he goes.
Well, yeah, well, or
Or that you're
or within
saying-
reason. No,
No,
because
aren't we beyond reason?
all right. What about somebody? I was going to say playing devil's advocate, but that almost doesn't seem like a metaphor. Like, but I mean, again, judges. If you think tax cuts are although it's very interesting. So, gosh, we could skip our way to the topic, but we shouldn't. But like, even the thing where he's stepping on the interest rates, which he critiqued other people before
yeah.
for doing, like, I mean.
Or the very people, or the tariffs are taking jobs away from the very people who voted for him. Potential. Tariffs.
Yeah, I mean,
all
the
across the board.
yeah.
In South Carolina, Indiana. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say to that.
So I ran a theory by you today.
Yes, that's you should,
That was my first call to you.
you should share this with everyone.
So
Yeah.
I feel like on one level, you see this kind of strange Putin marionette dynamic with Trump. And I thought, it's so interesting that Trump would. First off, it's strange that Trump would invite him to the White House on that. I mean, as a coach that did took out his son. Do you know what? Oh, really? Well, that'll be special. But, I'm thinking, let's say Putin does have some influence. You
Saying influence on Trump.
yeah
Are
okay
you saying that like as a theoretical?
yeah
Okay. All right.
uh
So let's say the wild possibility that Putin has influence on Donald Trump. Okay.
so
All right. I'm using it's Imagination Friday. I got my. What did you use? Let's put on our imagination.
yeah I don't know bourbon it's
I got
like
my
oh
imag-
wait
I
okay
have my imagination hats, boys and girls, on. Come with me.
so let's say that then why would Putin want to come here when it right near the election when it will obviously I think make things harder for Republicans running for Congress.
Is it obvious?
I or at least, again, elections are all about the middle, and I think the middle doesn't like that.
I read some. Well, right. I did read some of Trump supporters saying we're thankful that Russia helped Donald Trump because that prevented Hillary Clinton from being elected.
That's fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
So I think, though, maybe Putin wants to help the Democrats at this point because if the Russian disinformation stuff is, hey, what I really want is the United States that's not kind of a lean green fighting machine, kind of very well oiled, especially the whole kind of foreign policy, stops at the nation's edge kind of thing. And like I want things as divided as possible and contentious as possible so that when I want to do
Well,
things,
if he wants Montenegro, he's got that.
right, exactly. But that
Trump just gave him Montenegro.
They're very good people, but very aggressive. Oh yeah, you look at Montenegro. I mean, that's the people I'm worried about. Not a unified Germany with a beefed up military. It's Montenegro. You get them to 4% of GDP. Hey, next thing we'll all be living in that place in Casino Royale where James Bond won it. Wait, why wouldn't we all want to live in Montenegro? What would be so bad about that? No, but I mean, Putin kind of wants to do what he wants to do in his sphere of influence. Kind of old school. This is my corner. It's like drug lord stuff. This is my. I'm not going to try to run the whole city.
Right.
This is my corner.
Because he can't.
Right. Yeah. The GDP spread.
He's not able to. Right?
No. So you want to just weaken the sort of transatlantic kind of power, so that there's dissension, that there's more nationalism, so that you can kind of get your suburbans. The long and short of this, I think Putin could know he's helping the Democrats and doesn't have a problem with that.
Well, or it could be like, okay, I'm playing poker with somebody, and I'm keep robbing him blind because he doesn't know how to play poker, but he wants to keep playing.
Yeah.
So let me just keep
Let's go.
Let's keep going. Let's keep going ahead. Matter of fact, and I want to date your wife as well. He might.
Well, she's at the age. I'm kind of dead anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I think she might be a little too young for Putin, given his latest dalliances. But how do I know that? How do I know who Putin's with? I do.
Well, I'll just give some advice to Putin right now. If you come to the States in the fall, don't bring your children because you'll be separated at the border. And we're not good at reuniting.
Or you could be arrested once you cross the line.
Exactly.
You
Putin won't be arrested.
You gave the order. You gave the order.
You
gave the order to your guys to do the
Yeah.
thing. If
Yeah.
his office could be indicted, so can he.
Do you think if you had a test, like let's say we had a civics test,
Yeah.
8th grade level on the U.S. Constitution.
Trump wouldn't win.
Yeah, Putin and Trump. Putin would win.
Putin
that.
would win.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Putin 2020. Should we get into Nature and Grace?
That's good in Nature and Grace.
We have 2 viewers right now. Do you want to know who they are?
Sure.
Pulling it up. Andrew Stravitz is watching.
Hi, Andrew. Well, we're getting ready to hit your topic again, Andrew.
And that's the only one I can see right now.
All right.
All right, here we
Let's
go.
do it.
All right. Bill, next time we record, after I perform surgery, it will be 2 times faster, this
Wow.
computer.
That's exciting.
I'm very excited. Oh, somebody said something. What did they say? Andrew Stravitz from Phoenix, Arizona says it.
Oh, all right.
Thank you. That's so incredibly articulate. It's a very articulate comment. It.
That says it all.
All right. I'm waiting for a qualification, but there is none. Very nice guy. It was his great uncle or something, or uncle is the Wipf and Wipfenstock publishers.
Oh, nice.
You're welcome. Oh, he said you're welcome. Thank you. You've helped us going. You helped us, kind of keep this going. All right, here we go. What episode are we on, by the way?
220. Oh, wait, 230?
Just Uncle. It's his uncle. Wipfenstock is a pretty big publisher, too, of academic stuff. I mean, religious academic stuff. Pulling up our website. See, this is why you need to watch the Facebook feed. You see how the thing is put together. No, we're at 2:30, my friend.
230. Arizona wants me,
Here we go.
but I can't go back there. All right.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode 230. I'm Scott Jones.
And I'm Bill Bohr.
And if you don't know, if you're a listener but you don't know about our Facebook live stream, we actually do a Facebook Live. It appears on my homepage, but I'll post it to the New Persuasive Words page too. It's like, so we just gave 25 minutes of our best current events commentary.
We talked about the week.
The week.
The
And
week
that
it was.
The week that was. Jeez Louise. So we're continuing in response to a question from Andrew Stravitz, which I don't know that we've honored the question fully, but we made it our own.
But it's been a long, strange journey that we've been on. So, and it's been a good one. I think it's been interesting. It's been stimulating, and so this may or may not be the capstone, the summarizing.
Jesus is the capstone.
Well, I meant of our conversation. So the issue is when we come down to what is the relationship between nature and grace, and how much of human nature is involved in the interaction with God. What is the nature of the relationship between the nature and grace?
That would be such a good name for a band.
Which
Nature and Grace.
one? Nature and Grace. I like that. Get the band back together. Call it that.
So yeah, I mean, this is. I mean,
Like Tom Petty says, God's already written all the songs. You just got to find them. So he would be on the grace side of it.
he would be what we call an intrinsicist
Yeah.
versus Thomas Aquinas, characteristically, we would call an extrinsicist.
Yeah.
So can I read you something?
You may.
I said can, and you're right. I should have said may I read you something. Bill, do you use double negatives?
I never don't.
Trump is making us all into big grammarians. I'm looking for the... yeah, I had all these Post-its.
What happened? Someone took the Post-its?
Okay, there it is.
All right.
So this is from a guy I've been reading. We've been talking about Edward Oakes, A Theology of Grace and Six Controversies. So he is quoting a scholar here, O'Connor, Natural Desire for God. And he quotes him here talking about basically Aquinas' rejection of Augustine's idea that we all have an innate desire for God.
Mm-hmm.
So Connor says, is it not true that God is our beatitude? Has it not been revealed that the vision of God is the end of man? That's the whole point. It is a revealed truth that the vision of God is the only historical end man has ever had, so that purely natural man with a purely natural end has never existed. Does this mean that the human will, by its very nature, has an innate necessary tendency towards God or the vision of God as our beatitude? Does it mean that the intellect is tending by its nature as intellect prior to all actual knowledge towards this vision as the only object that can finally put an end to its unlimited craving for truth? In other words, has every intellectual creature a natural desire for that beatific vision? When the question is worded in this fashion, St. Thomas' answer, I believe, is a straightforward no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fair. Yeah. It does seem to be that some now again, there is a variety of human experience out there, which I find kind of the fascinating. I find this dance between. We've talked about it before. Somehow the founders, I think, the idea that they had a high view of what human intellect was capable of, and a low view of what the will could pull off. And I think there's still something about that framework. I'm listening. Dan Carlin just dropped his latest Hardcore History. It's absolutely fascinating. I'm still just in the first episode on the rise of Japan from the 19th century into the its defeat in World War II.
If you want as close to a non-ideological historian,
he's the best.
Undergraduate degree in history, that's it academically.
Yeah, he's still
and a talk radio guy.
Yeah, one of my favorite historians, just because of that bringing that journalistic neutrality.
He almost got in like fist fights with his producers because he's one of those guys who was on like conservative leaning talk radio, and he's like, look, I'm not really a conservative, and he's like, it's so great on podcast. Like, what I wanted was a younger, more open-minded audience, and now I've got it.
Well, again, I would say, yeah. I mean, I think it's, to me, when anyone asks me what other podcast other than ours they should listen to, I always go, Dan Carlin's the first person I say. But
Second is Dave Fitch. theology
Jeff,
on mission.
Jeff
Jeff
and
Holzglass.
Jeff and
Bill
Dave.
says Jeff Holzglass, theology on mission.
You haven't published. You haven't. Have you?
It's up. Yeah, I just
it's
haven't
up?
promoted.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
it's
all
up.
right.
It's up.
But one of the things that strikes me is that the nature of Japanese society is so complex, and I'm not going to get into that. But
Look, I saw The Last Samurai. I'm familiar with Tom Cruise. Right, I'm familiar.
and you watch Shogun. You're with
Shogun,
your mom.
Silence.
Right? Yeah.
Silence.
But one of the things that's really interesting to me, there were so many drivers within Japanese culture that kept pushing them towards building a colonial empire, pushing out of their boundaries, justifying their excursions into Korea and China. But
China.
I could help. I almost sound like Trump there, didn't
China.
I? But that there
If
were.
they're so great, why can't they beat President Xi?
But the fact is, there were people who were courageously opposing the trends in the 20s and 30s. Many of them were, writers and journalists, politicians. A lot of them got killed. Matter of fact, like there were, in the course of a couple of years, a sitting prime minister and 2 former prime ministers were killed. But there were people who stood up for what they thought was a better way. And the tragedy of the destruction that happened to Japan through World War II, if they listened to them, it could have been a very different history in Asia. And I guess what strikes me is you have these overall forces, particularly, this Thanatos syndrome towards allowing the power to overcome us. Our power to submit to power, our desire to give up our best interest for a great idea or the strong man or whatever. Even in societies where there's so much pressure towards that, there are these brave oppositions who speak for a higher thing. And now often those voices are muted, or often those voices are stamped out. But part of that's kind of the dance between this idea of there seems to be these noble voices in every age who go against the grain that speak of higher things regardless of whether or not they're popular or not. And to me, so that's kind of the dance between sometimes nature and grace is this idea that we do have these people who can rise above, but history is often those people are trampled.
But rise above, though, would not be nature grace, because you could look at, Thomas Aquinas could look at Aristotle, and Aristotle, would be a defender of virtues and reason and rising above base
I guess that's where my
intuitions.
Augustinian keeps slipping back in.
Right, yeah. No, I mean, because that's, but
Saying that
real
Aristotle
transcendence.
was given that, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there are these, aren't those still natural virtues on some level? Like, because you could be an atheist and be really capable of tapping into what we would call the natural virtues. So, I mean,
But when an atheist loves their children, is not God present in that love?
Well, I mean, you're talking to somebody who's an intrinsicist. Although, on one level, right, there's the real debate. Like, how would we frame the debate? Like, I mean, here's the issue, right? Nature, right, is things as they are, right?
As they are. So, with or without any kind of common grace.
Well, let's just stick philosophically for now. Like, even lexically, nature is sort of, if you look at all the roots.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Whereas grace is usually a gratuity, right? So
it's something from outside the machine.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is the interesting thing, right? Like, does anyone deserve love? If love by its nature is gratuitous, it has to be this kind of gift, right? Like, although it's perfected in something like duty, right? Like when love as gift draws you into duty, it's its highest form, right? But these things have a sort of tension to them, right? Like the fact that something is not necessarily the object of your love is what makes the love powerful, right?
Right. But I guess part of what's interesting. Okay, we just have another baby into the tribe. I mean, it's interesting, and this is my grandson. I loved that child the first time I saw it. Now, what's interesting about it is that how much of that is kind of how people argue that love in part may be, you know, you put evolution of protecting.
I got one more boar on the board.
Yeah, come on board. The evolution of protecting the built-in protecting the young. When you have that drive, that instinct in a rational being, then it takes on all kinds of different dynamics. So there's an interesting thing. I mean, I'm watching both my daughter-in-law and my son be, they're just zombies right now, but they're looking at this thing in a loving.
By the way, Andrew Stratt, we've got a commenter. Andrew, we're trying to get our radio thing with Facebook Live better. In from Phoenix, Arizona, via Facebook, Andrew Stravitz says, "Love is natural, self-interested mechanism." So that's kind of what you're saying, right? The boar.
You can there is a dimension of love that can be that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that my immediate love of that child could be just an extension of, okay, this child belongs to us. And so, I will beat off the saber-toothed tigers while my son runs away with his child. There's a dimension to that, but I think we're more than that. So I think what's super added to that, as you might say, where the grace comes.
But we could say, let me pose two opposing cultural constructs meant to, in their ideal forms, curb that innate thing and make something better, right? Marxism and a kind of secular liberalism, small L, Enlightenment liberalism. One is sort of the state collective, and one is sort of dependent on the other. But
right.
Marxism is a response to that liberal tradition. But both of them are sort of saying, hey, humanity can be more than the tribal instincts, right? Now, one is collectivist. One is trying to make a state that makes the individual sovereign, but also sort of curbs tribal loyalty so that we can all collectively participate in the common good, but have freedom in that. Versus, are either of those super nature or just evolved nature?
That's an interesting question. Well, I would say
that's why I asked it.
Well, but aren't there seeds of revealed Christianity ideology in both of them? I mean, can't you say that in some levels, most Western thought is somehow a Christian heresy?
Well, yeah. You could also say it's all Heraclitus, Parmenides, Plato, Aristotle.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but you don't understand what I'm saying. There's something.
Yeah. It's funny because you're actually arguing the Barty and von Balthasar kind of position, which I think I'm sympathetic to.
Yeah.
That things are, and on the Augustinian position, that basically that this sort of desire for God is something that really, and not just God, but the Christian God. I mean, there are revelations of the triune God all over the place, I think, not as the triune God, right? Like there are people that I think really connect with the God who's revealed in Jesus Christ and have no idea. It's like that old Billy Graham story, which I'm sure is apocryphal, but it represents the best of the Billy Graham tradition, right, where he's in China and he sees this Buddhist monk praying as he's going up to meet, like at the bottom of a hill, he's going up to like have a dialogue with other Buddhist monks, and he just, what's Billy Graham do? Shares Jesus, very in a way that's probably not deeply informed by a study of the monk's traditions. So then when he's coming down the hill, the monk runs up to him, Reverend Graham, thank you. What for what? The one you told me about, I always knew him, but I never knew his name. And so
it sounds awful close to Paul.
So these are.
Well, I will say one thing. I taught. I'm sure we've mentioned, but a year and a half ago, I taught homiletics at a Buddhist institute. And we were talking different statements, and I would periodically I'd put a quote up on the slide, and they all go, "Oh, what Buddhist master said that?" And I would say, "Well, that was Meister Eckhart or Augustine or something like that." So,
did you ever put up one from Joel Osteen?
Never. Joel never made the board.
That's second time in 3 podcasts
he mentioned him. One of the things I think
my intake on Joel is no higher.
Yes. Well, Simone Weil said something that she feels that there's a some form of crucifixion in every religion or every mythology of cultures. So that's a similar idea. Yeah. So what does that say? So I mean, are we? Does that mean that we want to save and it may not be? It may be a little gray. That the relationship between grace and nature is a little bit gray. But does that
9?
9?
No.
I was going through that.
No, yeah, I think no. I mean, it's interesting that like. All right, I'm going to quote Edward Oakes again. Well, actually, I was quoting somebody he was quoting, but he has this really nice. He's sort of paraphrasing somebody else, but I'm going to open up the Periscope.
I always like when you do that. Wait a minute.
He basically thinks this is from. He's citing Danielle.
We can start doing scenes from Das Boot.
Dude, that movie's weird. I saw that movie as a kid. I was like, that movie's so weird. I should watch it again. He says that, quoting Palmyra, he has 5 propositions that everybody on either side of the debate should, believe in. Every act of conceding that something is necessary in nature belongs to an infinite hierarchy of gradations, of which each one can seem like a grace to other narrower or lower gradations. That's 1. 2, the de facto immense wealth of creation, for example, of the animals and plants ordered to man, has a specific graced character as such. Number 3, much that corresponds to human nature in general is not meant for each individual. For example, bodily and mentally integrity, prosperity, and so on, especially since certain natural laws exclude the possibility that each isolated individual can partake of all these goods. They are thus, for the individual, grace in a preeminent way. 4, God could have ordered the world in many other different ways, that he chose this total arrangement that furnishes so much beneficence to the individual as well as to the whole can certainly be characterized as a grace. Finally, the whole environment, this is 5, finally the whole environment, necessarily ordered to innate dynamic as such, is de facto and constantly contingent, and so has a gracious character in all its details. And Oakes says no so-called extrinsicist, this would be like Aquinas, thinks grace is so utterly disconnected from nature that it makes no difference for one's eternal fate. Or difference to one's eternal fate, how one relates to God's offer of grace. And no alleged intrinsicist has ever collapsed the distinction between God and this creature as to be, in effect, a pantheist or a Gnostic. In that regard, all Christian theologians somewhere kind of have this messy relationship.
Yeah. I think, when theologians try to clean it totally up, it's probably often when they're at their worst.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, where's your copy of 9? Where do you keep it?
In the Bart section.
Yeah. English or German?
It's kind of like my issue with it is there's a lot of like double negatives.
So, I think so. Part of why maybe we sound muddled sometimes, to go back to Andrew's original question, is that
it's a combination of Mike Bleed and bourbon.
And it's also kind of where the great tradition ends up. I think there's a sense where, I think I like that idea of contingency. Even the idea of contingency, everything. Then there's a dimension of grace to everything in that.
I think I'm going to call you back to the bunker for this one. My wife's gone all weekend, so I'll probably be like, Bill, let's just do 7 hours like Dan Carlin. Like a whole audiobook. But this is from von Balthasar. So maybe we'll summarize our thoughts with this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking for you.
Thank you.
Though man is created in the image and likeness of God, he is formed from the dust of the earth. Though he is called to be the highest, the nearest to God, he is by origin the lowliest. What lies behind him, the dust of his origin, is a constant reminder that he must not confuse the archetype with the image. The fact that he is an image is a constant reminder that he must conform himself to the archetype of which he is patterned. In other words, man's first state is to be at a twofold remove. That's a great phrase, a twofold remove. At a remove from God and from nothingness. Because he comes from nothing, he retains, however great his likeness to the archetype, an even greater and ineradicable unlikeness. Nor can he increase his likeness to God by becoming more and more unmindful of his origin in order to thereby be more like God. On the contrary, it is only in the measure of his striving to be in the image and likeness of God, even though always at a remove from God, that man fulfills the purpose for which he was created. He achieves the highest measure of this likeness when he has the humility neither to forget nor to deny for an instant his condition of not being God, the nothingness of his origin.
Oh, it's hard to beat that. What's
Yeah.
that from?
That's from von Balthasar's "The State of the State of the Christian Life."
So we love often poorly, but we still love.
I love that we follow up the show about nothing with a deep quote about nothingness.
Yeah, but it's a pregnant nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. As
Yeah.
are all nothings.
Yeah.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you. Blessings.
Well, friends, thank you for tuning in.
I enjoyed this journey. Thank you.
It's fascinating.
Whether it's satisfying or not, Andrew, I can't guarantee that, but it's been interesting for
Yeah,
me. And for us.
absolutely.
All right, everybody, have a good weekend. Be safe. All right.
Bye now.